When I got ready to do this year, we kind of they're running a pattern, and I don't know whether it's just me or if that's the way State of the City addresses should be. But what I want to do today is talk a little bit about our fiscal condition, because certainly that seems to be an issue frequently with all the communities around us and with all the budget trouble that everybody's having and the economic downturn. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I'm actually going to break one of my unwritten rules. Nobody likes a bunch of facts and figures, but I think it's important that people understand some of the numbers, so I'll try to keep that to a minimum. Also going to talk about our accomplishments for 2010. For a rather slow year economically, I think as I look back over the year, I was really surprised at some of the things that we've been able to accomplish. And that's partly because certainly we've managed our money well. We're financially in pretty good shape, but we also have a great staff, and I think the staff ultimately is what makes all of us elected officials look good. I want to talk a little bit about economic development issues that we're facing, and certainly I think I speak for all the council that we're all very committed to trying to create as many jobs as we can in the Casa Grande area over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that will help us not only with this economic cycle, but the next one as well. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we see coming up in 2011. Those of you that have been here before, you know that I'm not a man of a lot of words, so we'll try to get through this in 30 or 35 minutes and hopefully get you on your way. I don't know how many of you saw the latest census figures, but just the fact for the day is that our official census is 48,571 people. That is a growth of about 92% from the last census in 2010. And I will tell you, there's lots of places that certainly we have neighbors that have grown faster, we have neighbors that have grown much slower, but 92% increase in population is pretty significant over a 10-year period of time. And I think we've done a really good job of managing our resources to be able to absorb that kind of growth without having it just totally cripple the community. Our fiscal condition. In round numbers, our operating budget's about $40 million. And during the boom cycle, the council, I think, made some and it was the previous council, so I won't take credit for it, it's not fair, but they made some very smart economic decisions. Number one, that they were going to take one-time revenues and spend them on one-time expenses. And I'll talk a little bit later about some of the capital projects we've completed in 2010. And that really is due to the fact that we didn't just go out and start spending some of that one-time revenue on operating expenses. We've talked about the economic downturn, and certainly it's affected our revenues like everybody else. Remember the $40 million number. We anticipated when we built this current year's budget that we would have revenues of about $35.5 million, and that's predominantly sales tax, state shared revenues, a little bit of property taxes. In fact, we do regular updates to both revenues and expenditures, and we've revised our revenue estimate from $35.5 million down to $33.6 million. And part of what's allowed us to do that is, again, the staff has been asked to cut back at mid-year to make sure we balance our expenditures and our revenues. During that cycle, the boom cycle, we were able to put together a $30 million rainy day fund, and we've been very careful as to how we spend that, anticipating that we would get to the point where we may run out of that money. We are in the process of preparing our budget for next year as we speak. The original requests were just about $40 million, but we recognize that we don't have that kind of revenue coming in, and we've actually downgraded our revenue estimate to a little over $33 million. We'll make up that difference after we go through some budget cuts with staff. We'll make up some of that difference with our rainy day fund. We anticipate by July 1st of 2012, our rainy day fund will have about $20 million in it. And it's our intent that we don't want to go below that number because it provides cash flow for us. We've been one of the few cities in the country that have been able to increase our bond rating. And we did that because we guaranteed that we would keep $20 million in the bank. A 1% decrease in our interest rate for the outstanding bonds we have would cost the city about $250,000. So it's to our advantage to keep that $20 million in there. We are starting to see an uptrend of a little bit in some of our revenues. So we're hoping that we'll get through this next year, and the following year we'll start seeing a better revenue picture and be able to start doing things and not worry about spending down our rainy day fund. We've also been able to do this by selectively filling vacancies, and we've got, I think, around 400 employees. We don't really have a hiring freeze on, but we've been very selective if people have left for retirement or to go to work someplace else in filling those positions. We currently have 50 vacant positions in the city of Casa Grande, and we will fill some of those. Some of those are currently trying to be filled, but our expectation is that we will continue to do more with less. And again, don't want to belabor the fact, but that's a tribute to the staff. They've all stepped up and they've done a great job. We've not been able to give any kind of pay raises for going on 3 years now, and we're asking them to do more with less. So for that, certainly appreciate the effort the staff has put into that. We've also done some kind of creative things. When I first took office, I'm all about regionalization, because I think that as time goes by, it's really important that we get along with our neighbors, cooperate with them wherever we can. And in fact, we have 2 contracts with the city of Eloy where we provide IT services to them, and we also provide building inspection services, so we're able to offset a portion of our expenditure for those personnel through contracting that service out with the neighboring city. And certainly I think Eloy appreciates the fact that they don't have to have a full-time building inspector or a full-time IT person to help make that happen. We also recently signed an agreement with the city of Maricopa for animal control services. They will house their animal control officer in our shelter. They will build some additional kennels for us. And again, by having the extra body there, it will allow us to have more regular business hours at our animal shelter. We're also looking at other partnership opportunities so that as we go down the road on a regional level, maybe we can provide services for some of our neighbors that will be more cost effective than having us do it ourselves or having them do it themselves. Enough about finance. I always get kind of bored with finance stuff, so let's talk about the fun stuff. Talk about some of the accomplishments we've had in 2010, and in no particular order, but the first one I'm going to talk about is one that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I talk about it a lot in groups, and that is the Casa Grande Mountain Park development. Any hikers out here? A few hikers? Let's see, there you go. How many trail builders? Oh, good. Okay. Just for the record, Casa Grande Mountain, a big chunk of the mountain has been owned by the city of Casa Grande for quite some time. The west side of the mountain is owned by the National Guard. There's a little chunk down on the south end that's owned by the Bureau of Land Management. And we've been working for probably 20 years, Mary, to achieve access and start developing trails out there. And this year has been kind of a banner year. I know there was some early criticism about starting trail development on the east side of the mountain when most of the hikers like to hike from the west side or the north side. But the east side happens to be where we own the most land. We have the ability to get trailheads in there and better access. And so it's been a community volunteer effort to build trails out there. We've had several trail building weekends. We've had volunteers from 35 people to 100 people that have come out and spent their Saturday morning building trails for all the rest of us to enjoy. We've also been fortunate to have a group of young people from AmeriCorps called Fire Team 4 spent about 6 weeks here, and they came specifically to build trails. So all the trail building we've done out there has been at no cost to the city of Casa Grande. Today, there's about a little over 9 miles of trails that we've laid out. And between the AmeriCorps group and the volunteers that we have, we're up around 6 miles of trail total that we've built. We do have a second AmeriCorps group here right now. They'll be here through the middle of May. It's our hope that we will connect the trailhead that we're building at the end of Erica, or the west end of Erica Road that's accessed off of Sunland Gin Road, with a brand new trailhead off of the end of Peart Road. That was made available through the generous agreement with the Tang family that allowed us a trailhead and a trail access from that part of the mountain up to the rest of it. We did achieve the BLM land this year, so we're working on that end. And sometime within the next couple of months, our public works crews will be out there actually developing trailheads on both the Erica Road piece as well as the Peart Road piece. You'll be able to access the entire east side of the mountain from either location. And if you've not been up there, it's a beautiful view from the top of the mountain. It's pretty unobstructed. You can see almost all the way down to Tucson from the southeast corner. So even if you're not much of a hiker, I would encourage you to go up, take a look. Great community effort. Certainly I don't want to embarrass Mary and her staff, but Mary has worked hard and diligently to get that accomplished, and certainly, Mary, again, I really don't mean to embarrass you, but I do. I think that it's something the community would be proud of. And I think the thing that I really like about it is that it's been a volunteer effort. You know, it's real easy to throw money at problems, but I think there's a real sense of ownership throughout the community by having our citizens go up there and work on it. Talked a little bit about the AmeriCorps kids. It's kind of an interesting program. We have 10 young people that are from predominantly the Midwest and the Northeast, and any of you that are from that part of the country, you know what the weather's like there right now. They have loved being in Casa Grande. They're living at the Carmagnet, or the Palm Island swimming pool complex. There are both young men and young women. We were laughing at the Fire 4 group because a couple of them were taking pictures of themselves out by the swimming pool in their shorts and sending them back to their relatives in Wisconsin. One kid told me, yeah, I sent my picture to my mom. I was talking to her on the phone and she hung up on me. But a great group of kids, and they've done not only the trail building, but they've done several other community activities as well. And I know we had breakfast with the new group last week. Great kids, and again, I can't say enough about the effort that Mary and her staff has put into making this happen, and making it happen in such a way that it's really not cost the city anything. We've also been the recipient of several awards this year, and there's only a couple that I want to highlight because I think that they're really significant in terms of where we're trying to take the community over the next 10 or 15 years. All too often, I think we forget about quality of life elements in a community, and certainly as you deal with economic developers, quality of life is really important. And we happen to have a really active Arts and Humanities Commission. They did receive an award for the Cook Plaza, which is the trailhead over by the old junior high school on Pinal Avenue. Again, it was a collaboration with public-private. We had some money that we put into it through the Arts and Humanities Commission, but we had Eagle Scout projects that helped landscape it. Ended up being a really good project. It received an award from the Arizona Planning Association this year. We also were award winners for the Casa Grande Performance Institute, and while that was a project we talked a little bit about last year, it's really blossomed this year. I don't know are there any soccer players out here? A couple. How many of you knew that we had all of the MSL soccer teams here, or MLS? Oh, see, there you go. I'm not a soccer guy, I'm sorry, I'm just not, but I did have our webmaster explain to me that in the professional soccer ranks, the top 3 players are David Beckham and 2 guys I can't remember. The The two guys I can't remember were actually out at the Francisco Grande at the Performance Institute. And what's interesting about that is that they did an exhibition game up in Phoenix at the University of Phoenix Stadium, had 30,000 people that paid to come and watch them play. They did an exhibition down in Tucson, and they had a little less than 20,000 people that paid to watch them play. Every one of you could have gone out there and watched him practice every day and stand 20 feet from him. How many of you knew that? Not very many. Sad to say, we're not a soccer society. But again, it's a public-private partnership, and it's kind of cool to have all of these professional soccer teams. We've had the Canadian national team out there. The Vancouver, what's the name of the Vancouver franchise? Vancouver Whitecaps or something, I think. Actually, the part owner of that franchise is Steve Nash. So if you would have known that Steve Nash might have been out there, maybe you would have gone out and watched the Vancouver group practice. That whole project not only won an award from the Arizona Planning Association, it was named the 2010 the 21st Century Economic Development Driver for the state of Arizona. And it's kind of a new model for how we do business. CGPI was also awarded an award from the JFK School of Government at Harvard University as a 2010 Innovation in American Government Award. And Casa Grande actually received two awards. One was for the CGPI, the other one was for our joint use library with Vista Grande High School. And what's interesting about the award is there were over 600 applicants. And I want to read to you the other cities that won awards besides Casa Grande: Boston, Dallas, New York, Philadelphia, San Jose, and Seattle. Isn't it interesting that little old Casa Grande got 2 awards, the only city to get 2, in some great company. I said that we did a lot of infrastructure work this year. First one is a Len Colla expansion project. Len Colla is a neighborhood center located in the east side of town. Been there for 30-some years. Built a brand new gymnasium and remodeled the facility. If any of you have been in it before it was remodeled, you won't recognize the inside today. And it's provided a great location for youth activities. It's open every day for somebody. And they also have adult time there during the day. So if you want to go play basketball and you're an old man like I am, you can go down on, I think, Tuesday mornings. But beautiful facility. Was funded predominantly through a bond issue that the voters approved several years ago. Next one is the Fire Station 504, which is being built on McCartney Road. We do have a dedication ceremony scheduled for that on April the 8th at 10 a.m. It was built predominantly with bond funds. There are some other funding categories that we were able to do to build that. Provides fire protection to the northeast end of town. And if you live out in that area, call your insurance company because it will drop your insurance premium, hopefully, 5 or 10%. The next one on the list is the Public Safety Center. I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at the screen during lunch, but there was a time-lapse photography slideshow of that construction of the center. We dedicated this a couple of months ago. That is where our police department and fire administration are currently. The rock on the front of the building was all donated. I know we had a lot of people that said, boy, that was pretty expensive, but the rock was free. And it's a nice home for the public safety group. They had been in their old station since the mid-70s. The old station was about, if I remember correctly, 20,000 square feet. The new station is 60,000 square feet, and we do expect that will last for the next 30 or 40 years. And we've built into it enough growth so that we won't have to replace it again. We had a lot of people say, well, how come you're building it so far out of town? Let me tell you, people, if you look at the city's planning boundary, that's almost right in the center of town by the time we get done. So it is well located for future look. Wastewater treatment plant. This is a project that's been going on for a couple of years, and happy to say that we hope to finish that in the next couple of months. It's double the size of the plant from 6 million gallons to 12 million gallons. It has some additional treatment in it so that we can use the effluent for more purposes, and we are actively looking at several different opportunities to reuse the effluent from the plant. And again, that will prepare us for when the growth curve starts over again to be able to handle the sewage flow from all this new development that we suspect will be coming our way. I don't know if many of you have been to City Hall recently. They're building a brand new building in the northeast corner of this, or northwest corner of the site that will house our court. It's been a long time dream of Judge Ferguson to get a court, and I'm glad we were finally able to do it, Judy. I know that you're kind of not there yet, but a couple more months. Scheduled to be done in July, and we did finance out of some of our cash reserves. It's become a huge problem because the court shares the city council space, and as the court's gotten busier and the council's gotten busier, we're competing for that space inside City Hall. So we'll move them out of City Hall into the new space and then hopefully find a use for that current court space. And then the last one I put in here, just because we weren't finished with it last year, is Cottonwood Lane. We have this little game plan, see, where we were working on Cottonwood Lane, and everybody that drove Cottonwood Lane drove McMurray. Now we're tearing up McMurray, so you go back to Cottonwood, so that when we're all done, I can drive McMurray and nobody else will be there. So, no, only kidding you. Great project, badly needed. I'm sure that many of you are like I am and use that as the back way into the mall. Was paid for in a variety of ways, development impact fees being a big chunk of it, and was I think $10.5, $11 million project, badly needed in the community, and it's been a nice addition. I want to focus a little bit on economic development, and I think that certainly given the current times, economic development has to be one of our primary focuses. And we're always working on trying to bring new jobs into the community. It's a very, very competitive business right now. And we can say, hey, we've got great weather, we've got a great workforce, we've got cheap land, we've got great quality of life. But at the end of the day, everybody else has the only thing that they may have that we don't, or that we have that they don't, maybe the sunshine. And so we do have some pretty interesting prospects that hopefully in the next 12 months, with the help of Cardiff, we can announce some of those and I think help bring the community into some new jobs. But that being said, though, I think that there has been some things that have happened in 2010 that really are a precursor of what we expect to see in the next couple of years. I've talked about being a big regional person, and I don't really care if the jobs get created in Eloy or Maricopa or Coolidge. We end up being the beneficiary not only of some of those jobs, because I'm sure that many of you in this room drive to one of those other cities to work, or maybe you live in one of the other cities and drive in here to live. But we're also the shopping hub for the community. So if we can get jobs on a regional basis, we're going to benefit from that no matter where they are. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why this regional thing is so important, and certainly through our membership in Cardiff, we're able to keep some of these people that maybe wouldn't come to Casa Grande in the area. In the last year, and Barry, forgive me for stealing your thunder, but we have had in Eloy a company called Republic Plastics that's located in there, and it's about 100 jobs. They hope to expand. And again, I'm sure that there are people in this room right now that work in Eloy and live here in town. Coolidge has a company called Bright Industries, and I got to tell you, before I was the mayor, I had no idea who they are. They make components for women's makeup, and so if you know, I don't know anything about makeup, but you know, if you're a Revlon girl, your makeup may be made out in Coolidge, Arizona. Maricopa has a brand new CAC campus that's being proposed out there. It will provide a tremendous number of jobs, And again, not just in Maricopa, we will see some of those jobs in Casa Grande as well. Some of our successes in 2010. We have worked for about a year to bring a company called Ritchie Bros to Casa Grande. And while Ritchie Bros is not a huge employer, they will employ full-time about 25 people. The advantage to Ritchie Bros, they are the largest heavy equipment manufacturer or auction house in the world, based out of Canada. And I'm going to talk a little bit about globalization and why we need to be looking globally and not just within Arizona. Certainly there's a huge sales tax component, so don't get me wrong. I mean, we're going to have the advantage of that. But I think as a council work through the issues with Ritchie Bros to try to bring them to town, what really sold me on them, they have a worldwide mailing list of 250,000 people. So 5 times a year, we're going to have an auction in Casa Grande that will bring 1,400 or 1,500 people into the community for a week-long stay for the auction. I don't know how many of you have expense accounts where you work. I don't, but I'm sure some of you do. Imagine 1,500 people coming to Casa Grande on an expense account 5 times a year for a week. And as I talk to some of the hospitality people in town, you know, do the arithmetic. 5 times a year, that means March, April, May, June, July, August, September, you're probably going to have 2 or 3 of those. And that is a group that certainly can use some business in those off times of the year. And did I say 250,000 people on a mailing list worldwide? That's got to help as well. So I can't speak for the rest of the council, but I will tell you that as I looked at them as a potential business here in Casa Grande, I was really pleased with the mailing list. I'm pleased with the 1,500 people that will be brought into town 5 times a year. And I really think that it will help put Casa Grande out there on a global basis. Monsanto came to town last year. And this is another company that was kind of under the radar. Monsanto is a Fortune 500 company. And you know, one of the fun things about, I have a leadership student that's with me today, and we were talking about some of the fun things a mayor gets to do. And I will tell you that far and away the best thing about being the mayor is getting to meet different people in different walks of life and different businesses. I went out to Monsanto, and you know, I'm not the brightest bulb in the block, but I think I'm fairly smart. I got an engineering degree, and even though I kind of cheated to get, no, that's not true. Engineering degree was pretty tough. I would tell you, I felt like a piker when I was out at Monsanto. These are really bright people. They do genetic research on cotton seeds. And again, while not a big employer, just having their presence in our community is huge. And even better yet, they bought a existing building that was sitting out there vacant. So lots of PhDs and master's degree people, and certainly Barry Albrecht and the Carediff team had a lot to do with bringing them into the community. ACO Polymer. Anybody know who, city staff doesn't count, but anybody know who ACO Polymer is? A couple people. ACO Polymer is kind of an interesting company. We talked about the need to globalize our appearance in the world. ACO Polymer is a company that is owned by a German group, and we are the North American headquarters. And so as they advertise internationally, you see Germany, you see a facility, I think, in New Zealand, and you see Casa Grande, Arizona. They make a composite concrete product for buildings. And they're expanding right now, hoping to double their workforce out there. So again, in a fairly tough economic time, we're starting to see a little bit of activity to bring new jobs into the community. We also, I talked a little bit about the Casa Grande Performance Institute, and while many people don't look at that as an economic driver, I think as I talk to some of the hotel owners and managers around the community, they have had the best winter they've had, in some cases, ever. In many cases, the best they've had in 4 or 5 years. And while they can't really track where their people come from, I do think that the CGPI has really helped bring some of those people into the community. We've had several soccer tournaments out there, starting to get into the lacrosse arena. And while I'm not lacrosse is not big on the West Coast, but it is one of the most rapidly growing sports on the West Coast. And oddly enough, use the same size field as a soccer field. I have friends up in the valley that have been able to come down here for soccer tournaments, youth soccer tournaments, say that the field is the best field their kids have ever played on. And I said earlier that we've had all of the Major League Soccer clubs out there. The grass and the fields are at that caliber because the pros aren't going to play on what we would typically play on in our parks. And it's certainly nothing negative about our parks, but you tend to cut the grass longer, and the pros don't want that kind of grass. So we're getting a reputation around the state as being a premier place to hold tournaments. We've already got that reputation for soccer. We think we're going to get there with lacrosse. And not only does that drive some of the hospitality industry, but as that facility grows, we're going to need trainers, we're going to need dietitians, nutritionists. Again, another job creation on a small scale, but I've always said if you can put a bunch of small ones together, they equal a big one. And if you have a tough economic time, you're not worrying about where to put 350 people that just got laid off. One that I don't have a slide on that I wanted to talk a little bit about because this surprised me a little bit. It's a group called the National Children's Study. Anybody heard of it? Yeah, I figured, Ronna, you would, yeah. I'd heard about this study and I thought, it's just some think tank. It's a 20-year-long study, and they're studying kids from birth to age 20 and childhood diseases. What causes them? Is it genetic? Is it environment? Is it lifestyle? So they're going to follow kids from birth to age 20 and create a study. Well, while it's technically and scientifically pretty interesting, what surprised me is they've hired 25 people in town. And once again, they're nurses, they're lab technicians, they're community outreach professionals. So again, there's a small business, came into town pretty quiet. The study's being led by a company called Battelle Labs. If you know who Battelle Labs is, they're one of the largest private think tanks in the country, and they're in Casa Grande, Arizona. They picked 105 sites around the country, and as luck would have it, we were one of those 105. So again, on an economic development front, we're working very hard to try to bring in all types of industries and all types of jobs. We've also had several new retailers come in, and as I was sitting down to write this talk, I surprised myself a little bit because it didn't seem like we were very busy. But listen to the list of newcomers. Chipotle's, EG's, Chick-fil-A, The Room Store, Vantage Credit Union, and Culver's. Now, sure, a lot of those are restaurants, but they all employ people, and it tells me that somebody realizes that our economy is going to continue to grow. So, all positive signs. The city manager and I were kind of laughing about this next statistic because 15 years ago, a busy year in the home building industry in Casa Grande was between 125 and 150 home starts. During the heyday, we were doing 2,500, 2,800 home starts a year. This past year in 2010, we did 137. And everybody thought, oh my God, that's really slow. But think about where we were 15 years ago. That was a busy year. And I'll tell you, as I travel around the state and talk to other cities, there's a lot of them that would love to have 135 new home starts, especially in the current economy. Certainly expect to see it better next year because I'm optimistic. I think we're going to see a lot of things better next year. But I was surprised by the number of single-family homes, particularly if you compare it historically as opposed to the recent past. I was reading the Republic yesterday, and I want to just quickly read some pieces of an editorial that caught my eye. I keep talking about regional issues and how important that is. I don't know how many of you read the Republic. My wife tells me I'm a dinosaur because I still read a print newspaper instead of online. And it's true. But The title of the editorial is City Valleys Grow Up and Not Out. And it says, 10 years ago, it was every city for himself, and officials touted regionalization when it was convenient, but then quietly tried to swipe benefiting projects from their neighbors. Look at what's happened in the valley today compared to 10 years ago, and they realize the need for regionalization. And I think that certainly the mayors of the communities in Western Pinal County, we meet regularly, we're friends with each other, and we understand regionalization, and we work very hard together to keep industry and retail coming into the community regardless of where it is. The editorial goes on to say that cities recognize the need to attract and retain high-wage, not retail jobs. As they were forced to make difficult budget cuts, they were also forced to come together. Doesn't that sound kind of like the time we're in right now? Mayors now frequently tout their belief that a rising tide lifts all ships. In other words, that a job or investment win for a neighbor is a win for all. And I've been saying that since I was elected 4 years ago. I really believe that, and I think that as we look regionally, I'm really happy that Eloy and Coolidge and Maricopa and Florence are attracting more and more jobs to our community. When we did our general plan, one of the interesting statistics that came out, we had hired the Elliott Pollock Group to do a specific study on Casa Grande. And all too often we're either lumped in with Pinal County as a whole or the Phoenix metro area, and we don't really get a good snapshot of what Casa Grande is all about. Healthy communities have a population to job ratio of about 1/2. And if you look at Pinal County as a whole, and I'm sure I'm not totally accurate on the number, but I'm close. Pinal County as a whole has a population to job ratio of 0.25 or 0.27. So that means that 3/4 of the people that live in Pinal County are traveling out of Pinal County to go to work. Casa Grande's ratio was, I think at the time, was 0.42 or 0.43, which means Casa Grande has a very healthy job base for the population that we serve. And that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of people here that commute up to the valley, because I know we do, but it tells me that we have a lot of people that commute into Casa Grande from outside of the town for the jobs that we do have available. And certainly I think it's our goal as a city council and the government leaders in town to make sure that we maintain that job ratio in our community, because part of what separates us from a lot of other communities, I think, is that sense of ownership. I talked a little bit earlier about our park project at CG Mountain. Think about any other community you know of where you can build most of a trail system without spending a dime of the taxpayers' money. I think that's pretty phenomenal, and I think that that's a tribute to the people that take ownership in the community that we live in. And you get that by having jobs for your people to work at locally. A couple of other quick things we've done this year for economic development. We do have a brand new website for economic development. There is a pen in your little folder that we gave everybody that has our new website address. It's called Think Big, Think Casa Grande. Great website. It was really tapered for site selectors that go out and look at different communities. Easy for them to navigate. We have some testimonials on there from local people as to why they picked Casa Grande to grow. And we've seen a pretty significant amount of web traffic on that site so far. So would encourage all of you to go take a look at it. I've talked a couple of times about our membership in CAREDIF. And CAREDIF is the Central Arizona Economic Development Foundation. We were one of the first public-private foundations founded in the state of Arizona. And I think, Barry, you're 30 years now, is that right? 35 years that it's been around. It is a public-private partnership, and it's geared strictly at bringing economic development into our community. We've been a very supportive member, and will continue to be a supportive member. A couple of months ago, we were invited to join Greater Phoenix Economic Development Council. City Council decided that it was a good investment in our economic development circle. They get 300 and some leads a year, and we will be able to hopefully generate some of those into jobs for our local economy. I want to kind of finish by talking about some of the challenges, and certainly as I've talked about some of the things that are going on, I'm sure you can guess that at the top of the list is to try to maintain our fiscal health. My crystal ball is no better than anybody else's, and certainly with the recent advent of $4 a gallon gasoline, we're starting to see a lot of people that are looking very carefully at how they spend their money. I know certainly in my own life I do that because you have X amount of money to spend, and it's pretty tough when you're putting it in a gas tank. So I think that we need to work very hard to maintain the city's fiscal health. I'm really confident that the team of people we have working for us in the council will make sure that we get through however long this thing lasts, and if it stops tomorrow, that's good. We've got a whole line of things that we need to get busy on. But I also think that we're as a council, are very fiscally conservative, and so we're not going to go out and spend it frivolously. We need to continue to be competitive, not only in Arizona for new jobs, and not only in the United States, but I think we need to start looking globally. For about the last year, I've been reading a book called, what's the name of the book, Judy? It's about the flattening of the global economy. And I started it so long ago, I can't remember the name of it. But what's happened worldwide is that the way we used to do business is different. If you ever need tech support, I mean, I'm not a computer guy, so I call tech support all the time. And I always like to talk to the people about where they're at. Can't tell you how many times I've called tech support and I'm talking to somebody in the Philippines, in India. And this book talks about how that whole global environment is shrinking. And if Casa Grande doesn't become a player at that global level, we're going to be left at the train station while the train is taken off. So I think it's really important over the next few years to get Casa Grande's name out on a global level. I talked about Ritchie Bros. 250,000 people worldwide are going to get a note that says, come to Casa Grande, Arizona. Casa Grande Performance Institute. We've had the Canadian national team out there. We've had MLS teams from all over the United States there. We have visitors from all over the world that have come out there. Again, looking on an international scale. ACO Polymers, company based out of Germany. We're the North American headquarters. Every time they send something out, it has Casa Grande, Arizona on it, no matter where they send it in the world. That's the vision that we need to have if we're going to be competitive in the next 5, 10, 15 years at a global level. And I'm really confident that we're putting the pieces in place to allow us to do that. I think one of the other challenges we have is downtown. I've been saying that for 4 years. Historic downtowns are always very problematic because you have small business owners that are struggling to get by, and what can we do to help that? I wish I had a good answer. I think that over the next year and a half, 2 years, we're really going to have to come to grips with that because our historic downtown is a very important asset. And as you look at economic developers, many of them look at historic downtowns to say, what have you done to retain and maintain your historic downtown, because they don't want to see a city that historic downtown has turned into empty boarded up buildings. That's a challenge that we need to really address over the next 12 to 18 months. We are working on several long-term projects. I keep harping about economic development, and I don't really want to apologize for that because it's important, but I think that one of the issues that they all look at is the education system. And I think that we're working right now with the elementary school district and the high school district, the chamber, and Cardiff on a workforce development program for all ages, not just high school and college. We need to have a workforce that's ready to go to work, a workforce that has the technological skills that they can walk into the workforce and be able to perform that job quickly and readily, and be trainable. So I think, in summary, the city's in okay shape financially. I think we've done a lot of stuff over the last year, both on the ground that you can see and some of the stuff in the background. I think we're in good hands for the next few years in terms of looking forward. I do think the economy will turn around and that will help all of us. And I think you're going to see us be much more aggressive in the economic development front to try to attract more jobs and more industry. And we don't want to just reshuffle the money that's here. We want industry coming from outside the area that's new money in the community so that we can grow other businesses at the same time. So thank you very much, and you've been a great audience. I hope you've enjoyed the talk.